St. Cloud was a very different place 40 years ago.
We knew the impact a community foundation could have, but it was all about building that trust and relationships.
It was time to invest in our community, and we had leaders who had that vision.
There was a lot of philanthropy in the community.
It's a community resource that helps everyone.
We really are a collection of, today, well over probably 1,000 different stories of donors who care about their community and want to do something positive.
When you think of the hundreds and hundreds that are benefiting, to me that's just phenomenal.
It's really engage, connect, and build. It's that simple.
We transform lives.
Those of us who can remember the 1980s, we were experiencing and coming out of the farm crisis. There were a lot of challenges across greater Minnesota, and there were efforts actually underway in the entire state looking at ways to help and support, in particular, rural communities. And here in St. Cloud, Minnesota, Alex Didier was leading the Bremer Bank and working with business owners and farmers. And it was his belief, having looked at other examples around the state and around the country, that there were these things called community foundations.
What Al had seen is that there were a number of companies that had sold. The St. Cloud Times had sold, it became part of Gannett, and so he was seeing these companies selling, and then of course those assets leaving the community. And he just thought that, you know, if we have a community foundation, we can have a situation where those fortunes that are made here can possibly stay here rather than just move out of the area.
Back in the 70s, in my position at First American National Bank, I could see that there was a lot of wealth and capital forming in St. Cloud in second and third generation people, and felt, well, this would be ideal for St. Cloud to have a foundation like they have in North Dakota and give these people an opportunity to contribute funds into perpetuity if they so desire.
And one of the things that he did that to this day I think was very admirable is he brought some of his competitors together, other bankers, and said, you know, one thing we share in common is we all care about central Minnesota. And there's this vehicle called a community foundation that we currently don't have, but if we came together, we could create something for the good of our community.
All the years preceding this organization, people were giving money away, and some of them in sizable $1 million, $2 million donations outside of the community. And our thoughts were, we have legitimate needs here also. So let's keep the money here and help the whole body of people in St. Cloud metro area.
After he'd explained it to me, I was still in a quandary. I got thinking about it more and more, and I kept saying to myself, how could you ever possibly get enough money, you know, in a foundation to be giving away 5% of little or nothing? Boy, was I wrong, and I'm so glad I was wrong.
They retained Ed Henry, who was a former mayor, to serve as an independent consultant to advise and assist with startup activities. He was so proud of that work that he did with Alex and the board to help really launch it.
Some of the money was collected at the front end was clerical help and someone to go out and make calls and understand how to make the calls for that purpose. So if you wanted to find someone from another organization, from another community, who could help you with those skills.
They recruited and hired the first official executive director, Leland Sam Newman. He was bright and intelligent, and he had a special expertise in writing grants. And so he wrote grants on behalf of the original organization to other funders, namely Bush. Even the McKnight Foundation provided some of the initial dollars in those early years.
No one was looking for a pile of money so they could smile and say, whoa, ho, ho, look what we did. You wanted to be able to say, look at the people we've helped.
But I was on the committee to hire Steve, and George Story and I were sitting next to each other. Steve was only in his 20s. And when I got it over, I said to George, I said, you know, he's very impressive, but I think he's too young for that responsibility. And George said to me, did you really listen to him, Don? I said, well, maybe not carefully enough. Well, the rest is history.
Steve Jewell's impact on the Community Foundation in this community is huge. Steve Jewell has been a key leader in this community. He has the vision. He's very visionary. He meets with other people to get ideas.
He's built relationships in the community. He understands community foundations and shares that knowledge freely with others.
And shortly before I arrived in 1996 was the terrible tragedy with Brian Kleinfelter being killed. And already members of the board at the CMCF were having conversations with the family about setting up a fund in honor of Brian Kleinfelter. And that was just a way where the foundation working behind the scenes could provide philanthropic support to a family. And so that's one thing that was happening back in 1996 when I arrived.
He is also one of those people that has a big heart, and that really is something that relates well to donors as well.
Alex, I will remember walking into my offices, into our offices that day, talking about a nonprofit in the community that unfortunately had some financial issues and was closing its doors. And Alex's main concern at the time was, is this going to discourage people from serving on boards of other nonprofits? Because it's challenging being a board member of a nonprofit. And he thought it would be a good idea to call people together to talk about an education and training program for board members of nonprofits. So we gathered a group of people together to talk about that, and out of it emerged a program in those early years called Board Smart. And it was about how to train and educate people to serve on boards of directors. That initial task force had a phenomenal representative from the College of St. Benedict by the name of Barbara Carlson. And that was my first interaction and opportunity to meet Barb Carlson, who would go on to later become an employee and a really important part of our organization.
I think she helped grow the foundation with her relationships and her relationship skills with all of our donors that we met with. She'd meet people and they would just want to talk to her.
My previous experience had been in working for the education of women at the College of St. Benedict. I attended a conference at the Community Foundation in Milwaukee, and they have a very successful women's fund. And I thought, I could combine what I did at St. Ben's with what I'm going to do at the Community Foundation. And for a variety of reasons, we thought it would be a great project for the Community Foundation to undertake.
The Women's Fund is an organization of Central Minnesota that serves 3 very specific groups: girls aged 10 to 18, women who are facing any type of adversity, and elder women.
The original purpose, as Barb envisioned it, was to gather donors to really focus on women and girls in the community by providing grants to nonprofits who were already serving that population.
And so Barb sort of single-handedly started the idea, and then really surround herself with amazing founding women.
The very first event was at the College of St. Benedict. And Barb Carlson had this notion of fundraising by what we called a Post-it note campaign. She had little Post-it notes and thought that we could get to someday perhaps $1 million by engaging different levels of donors in this Post-it note campaign.
So they had these large poster-sized cardboard pieces up, and they had an event where all these women got up on stage and they took their Post-it note and they wrote their name and their commitment to the women of Central Minnesota by writing the amount that they would consider giving to the Women's Fund.
Central Minnesota Community Foundation is such a unique organization in our community in that it truly is a network builder. It connects resources, engages community, it brings so many unique perspectives and approaches to community problem solving together in one central place.
CMCF originally, that was the name of it, Central Minnesota Community Foundation. And of course, there was a need in Brainerd, there was a need in Wilmer, some of the other communities, and so that's when the foundation spread to these other areas. And basically, it was a way to take the expertise that Steve Jewell and his team had and leverage it over a larger geography.
Brian Myers was board chair and said to me, he said, we have these wonderful partnerships with Brainerd and Wilmer, St. Cloud, then Alexandria had joined us. And how is it and what actions are we taking to preserve our partnership and our collaboration and working together?
You looked at it from a governance standpoint and whatnot, you could see that, you know, this is a good idea, but if this idea is really going to flourish, we probably need to come up with a different strategy. And so that's where the whole idea of community giving came to be.
This model is built on the fact that we lead with local. So every local community is front and center, the local foundation. And yet we all needed some common services and support. So the idea would be that the corporate entity would be somewhat in the back seat. And so that corporate entity, for lack of a better word, became in essence a holding company. But again, the branding would all lead with local.
And community giving provides our backroom services, our financial services, HR, database, and website. So we can focus, the Central Minnesota Community Foundation team can focus on being boots on the ground in Central Minnesota for our donors. Steve Jewell serves now as the CEO and president of Community Giving. And after that, we had the opportunity to hire Carol Turnow, who was the first CMCF ED after the transition to Community Giving. So we're very lucky to have Carol as a mentor. Carol did a lot of work with equity. She cared about the community. She brought her expertise with working with donors from her other job before this one. And she also brought experience with planned giving so we could get some more legacy gifts in the foundation.
But our communities today are made up of people from all kinds of different backgrounds, whether it be economic, whether it be age, whether it be understanding of technology, or whatever. There's lots of differences that exist. And building community means understanding and respecting those differences, coming together and finding what you have in common and making good things happen.
What happened was these people, and it was people from education, industry, nonprofits, etc., took a bus trip to Dubuque. And when they got down there, they found that the community was speaking with one voice, and that one voice was about economic prosperity, community development, and it seemed like everybody was on the same page. So that group of people came back, and I was part of working on that to develop a conversation, basically, of how to develop a similar mindset in St. Cloud. And so that's where we came up with the community pillars.
In building community, it's not always what's in it for me, it's what's in it for us. And I think that's the key aspect of the work we do at all of our community foundations. How do we bring people to see what's in it for us collectively, as opposed to just what's in it for me?
Things that came about as a result of that were the Public Safety Foundation. The arts organizations were all kind of not working together, and so the Around the Cloud website, that came out of the community pillars. The GSDC was another one, because there was no regional entity that was working on economic development that was private sector led. And so there were a number of great initiatives that took place.
A group of Rotarians coming together along with others to make Lake George and Summertime by George possible. That's beautiful. Just example after example. And our job at the Community Foundation is to nurture that, grow that, and support that.
And the Good Samaritan Fund is a subsidiary fund of the Community Foundation, and our mission is to provide one-time emergency assistance to those people facing a crisis where nowhere else to turn to for help.
Dave Nowak and Dave Marquardt knew people that were in need. They heard about a child who I believe he had cancer and needed medicine, and then they had to refrigerate that medicine, and they didn't have the refrigerator, so the Good Samaritan Fund bought the refrigerator, provided the funds for the refrigerator.
We work with over 40 different agencies in central Minnesota. Last year, we helped over 700 people.
The Building Equity Through Action started in 2021, and CMCF's leaders' vision was to bring people together and to build understanding and relationship And at the time, we wanted to know what are the disparities and inequities that we have in this community as it relates to education and employment and housing and community engagement. And so we brought about 80 leaders.
And over the period of years now, we've got action groups around housing, economy, healthcare, education, and community engagement. And the Community Engagement Committee pulls all those roles together and brings people together and helps promote those items.
I think part of the best work of a community foundation happens when we are willing to both be a participant and as well as sometimes be a catalyst to make something happen.
Really as a convener and bringing voices together and being able to have difficult conversations, bringing resources to bear on those challenging topics.
One of the things that's really important with philanthropy is it's not just the dollars, it's the minds behind the dollars. You know, you want smart money. That's the work that the Community Foundation does. The staff there researches the nonprofits, makes sure that they're legitimate, they're doing the right thing in the community. So when donors, whether it's through a donor advised fund or through other means, as they do philanthropy, they know which organizations are making a difference in the community.
The You Got Leadership program was inspired by someone named Mary Thomas, who some of our CMCF team connected with, and were inspired to start a leadership program for BIPOC communities. They're usually younger people early on in their career. They go through an intensive training. It includes meeting with the mayor. In the past, they've had dinners at the mayor's house. And at the Community Foundation, one role that we have currently with them is that we have emerging board members come on. We interview some of the leaders in that program and have them come alongside the foundation and the board members and learn about community and what a community foundation does.
The Community Foundation made me feel like I belonged. It also gave me space and resources to connect with other, I would say, established leaders in the community. And the impact is that we have had over 100 emerging leaders go through the program, and we have paired them with established leaders in the community to kind of mentor them. And more often than not, the mentors say they learn more from their mentees than even, the mentees themselves.
Create Community started as a mayor's initiative. Currently, it brings together people once a year and has conversations on race, where we bring people together across St. Cloud area and beyond to just have those basic conversations about race. You can be open in a safe space.
And it was the intersection of education, health, housing, and awareness building. And Create Community's vision was to make St. Cloud a welcoming place with respect and opportunity for all.
Connecting resources, that's an important function for all community foundations, and in particular the Central Minnesota Community Foundation has done that over the years.
And they are always there to connect you with anything that you do need, even if they don't have the resources themselves.
Bob Sullivan was the chairman of the board of Herberger's, the corporate division, and he had a son who passed away, and they created a fund at the Community Foundation to administer these dollars. And they had to give some grants out to support things in the community. And if you can recall, the YMCA was being really challenged in the old days because they built the building, but it wasn't fully paid for. And so there was some debt that was hanging on to that property at the time. And the Community Foundation made an initial grant out of those Sullivan dollars to support the YMCA in helping them raise some additional dollars to pay off that debt.
Our foundation partnered with the Y to keep that key element in our community, and through our fund holders, we're able to, and other community members, we're able to help raise enough funds to keep the Y open and keep that place for our whole community.
I think the role that the Community Foundation played at a critical time was very helpful, and it was a way in which we honor a past donor by administering those dollars and try to make good things happen for the good of the community. One of the things I'm probably most proud of is One, we've been able to attract incredible volunteers and board members who continue to step up and say, I want to serve and I want to be a part of this. And that is, I can't start naming all the names, but any past board member, and in particular the board chairs, were so instrumental.
I believe we've given out about $167 million, and our current assets are at about $160 million.
Central Minnesota Community Foundation has done a lot of work on social trust. So for years we've gauged every 5 years or so a survey that talked about how are people getting along together, you know, who do they hang out with. And all of that is what makes a person feel like they're a part of the community.
To be able to have the CMCF locally here gives us a direct line to stewardship in a way that all communities need.
I think their biggest strength is tying donors to the need in the community. So many people want to do good and they're just not sure how to do it. And they just feel uneasy when they're not aware of the opportunities. They know they want to help this particular cause, but what does that look like in central Minnesota? How can they make a positive impact? So the Community Foundation's been great with my clients about, let's go on a tour, let me give you some options, let me explain this organization. It really gives people the opportunity to fulfill their intent and understand where their money's going.
I'm proud of the people who have been involved in the foundation. And you think about the staff over the years, you know, just beautiful people inside and out doing really good work.
They've promoted philanthropy, they've helped people with their financial planning through charitable gifts, they've helped small charities get started via grants. They've just been a great resource for the community.
I mean, advocacy is their main support for an organization like ours. We are able to spread our message through their platforms to let people know that we exist because the Community Foundation is there to share the opportunities for giving in our community.
The idea that we've built a culture of philanthropy, not only in St. Cloud, but in these other communities. And I look at, if it wasn't for that, and for that both building of social capital and financial capital, there would be a lot of people that just wouldn't be where they are today.
You know, there's nobody that I know of that doesn't know about the Community Foundation. It seems like everybody is aware, and most people are well aware of the impact it's had on the community.
I think it's important to remember that we've been here 40 years. We are here, we are your local community foundation, and we're going to be here in the future. We're going to be here for our donors, our community. We're still going to be giving away scholarships, and we don't know what the next need is going to be, but that's why we have this community impact fund that people can give to. So when those needs come up in the next 20, 30 years, there's dollars available to support what the current needs are in our community.
They're making an impact. They're convening leaders. And when we say leaders, they're convening leaders who are intentional about the work that needs to be done and also making the investment.
We have a lot of economic uncertainty, and that's exactly where a foundation can work much like a bank can work and help put money in the right places.
I would say that most of our community challenges that we do have wouldn't be tackled, but they are always first at the table, showing that they are leaders and can help to tackle those issues.
No one was looking for a pile of money so they can smile and say, whoa, ho, ho, look what we did. You wanted to be able to say, look at the people we've helped.